Okay, I think we might be live. Let's give it 1 minute just to catch up with us. There we go. I see us on the screen. Hey, Product Up viewers. I'm Christine. You probably got a whole bunch of emails from me over the past week as we have eagerly geared up for this first event. Welcome officially to our very first speaker series. In fact, for this new little community that we're calling Delta V, it's our inaugural event. It's a new initiative to kind of build a community around product operations, which at least for the people here with me today, near and dear to our hearts. Whether you're simply curious about building this role in tech for yourself, for your company, or like the folks we're talking to today, you've been leading and building the orgs already. Our goal is really to connect learners, leaders, and advocates of product ops. So welcome. Some quick logistics for tonight, and then we'll jump into some intros. Literally everything you need to know is in the calendar invite. Hopefully you already have the stream URL because that is how you'll be hearing and seeing our beautiful voices and faces. But when it comes to things like Q&A, kind of connecting on Slack with other members, all of those links and exactly what you need are in that invite, so check it out. There is a Slido where you can anonymously ask and upvote questions. We'll have a big Q&A portion. So head that way too and upvote anything that you're curious about. And with that, I will let our speakers take it away. Do we want to start with Amanda doing a quick intro?
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Wood. I currently lead product operations at Blend, which is a company based in San Francisco that essentially helps banks and credit unions digitize the mortgage process and a few other processes. I have only been there for about a month and a half. Prior to that, I was at Circle Up for 2 years. Prior to that, I was at SoFi for almost 5, and a few less relevant roles before that, but really excited to be here today.
Awesome. We also have Jason with us as well.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. My name's Jason Nager. I've been at Google for about 8 years now. I currently lead the product operations team for the Google Cloud customer care team. And this has to do with our offerings to Google Cloud customers on supporting them and their needs and making sure they have the right levels of mission critical support to help them successfully use our platform. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jason. Jen, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Jen Zagofsky. I am currently leading product operations at MuleSoft, which is a part of Salesforce. I've been there only a month. I also joined during this pandemic and previously have held program and product ops and product management roles at Flexport, and before that, DocuSign, and a whole host of other companies. I'm really excited to be part of this growing community.
Welcome, welcome. Shereen, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Shereen Idnani. I am actually on my 4th day of a new job. I've just recently joined Shipped, and I'm in a PM role there. But more recently, I led the product operations org for Instacart. So even though I'm back as a PM, I'm a huge product ops enthusiast. I plan on influencing it in my new org. So excited about that. Prior to Instacart and Shipped, did a lot of work and PM work in the retail tech space. I'm super excited to be here.
Congrats on your new gig. And you guys, I already kind of gave a quick intro. My name is Christine. I currently lead our product operations team at Robinhood. Like a lot of people in the product ops space, I've careened between ops and product prior in my career. So I did a few years as a product manager at Robinhood as well, product at Udacity before that, and then a mix of product operations and pure ops at Google to kind of kick off my love for all things tech. So with that, you kind of have a quick background of all of us. we're just going to dive right into questions or topics. The first kind of area is defining product ops. So one of the things that kind of inspired our formation of Delta V is that there's really not a uniform language around how we describe product operations. It's a growing trend and a growing role in tech, but everyone has kind of a slightly different flavor to it. So one of the things I get a lot is, what exactly is product ops? How would you describe this? And Jason, I think I'm going to toss this one to you. When you get that question, how do you explain product operations to people?
Yeah, no, I think, Christine, you're absolutely right. And, even at Google, which is a super large company, like there's many, many product ops teams. And I've talked to other teams, and every team I've talked to, it's defined a little bit differently. The team that I'm leading in the customer care area in cloud, it's a new function. It's something we started at the beginning of the year. And we noticed, if you have product managers, the product managers are usually focused on developing the roadmap, defining what the features are, figuring out how are you going to price the product, and what is that overall offering, and continuing to manage the roadmap. And you have other teams that maybe drive the operations on the team. So, for example, in the customer care org, we have teams that are actually working on delivering support. But we found that there's this gap that we needed to fill. That's really focused on how do you take that product and make sure it actually lands in the field. It lands with our customers, it lands with our sellers, we can sell it, we can, sign up customers, we can onboard them, and we're looking at the overall customer experience of the product, and we have that voice of the customer, and we can feed that input back to product management. So, we partner a lot with, it's kind of at the intersection of partnering with product management organization, operations teams, sales and marketing, and other teams in our go-to-market function. So the way that we've defined it and where I am is it's kind of bringing all those teams together and helping to make sure the product actually lands well with customers.
Do you find that it's mostly for like new product introduction, product readiness, operational readiness, or does your role kind of span both the new products and mature product lines, and even, we wish they didn't exist, but sometimes they do, declining product lines as well? Yeah, no, that's a great question. We find that it spans like the full life cycle. So we have new products that we're introducing that we're focused on, but then we also have products that we're sunsetting, that we have to focus on how do we deprecate them, how do we move customers to kind of our new offerings that we have in the market. So it spans the full life cycle. One thing that I also hear a lot is, okay, you can describe what product ops is. Sometimes my little quippy one-liner is, hey, if a PM is the CEO of a product, and yeah, I know that metaphor is sometimes outdated, but squint at it. Then your product ops manager is kind of the mini COO, right? They're kind of there to make all the operational side of the business run and kind of be the glue. Amanda, at Blend, what do you see as kind of the primary value add of product ops at the company?
Yeah, it's a good question. To me, it's a few things, and it aligns with what Jason just said. But I think it all rolls up to essentially delivering more value to customers more quickly and consistently. And that's done in a few ways. One, as Jason touched on, enablement of the field. So helping to operationalize rollouts of new products, in particular in my role, in partnership with product marketing, sales, customer success, the support team, to take products from alpha to limited availability to GA. And while doing that, we equip go-to-market teams to launch and support these new products with everything from technical enablement, so product documentation, to more framing of the value props of those specific products for the sales team, for instance. And then the other thing that I think is really important is creating structured product feedback loops. So synthesizing the insights that you get from all of those customer-facing orgs, which usually are being thrown at you from a million different places and through a million different mediums. and ensuring that the voice of the customer is heard and understood and shared throughout the org, and particularly with products, so that you can help to leverage that to inform your product roadmap.
Yeah, and so it sounds like, right, between how you describe it and how Jason described it, there's some overlap, there's some differences, right? It's a nice little Venn diagram of both. You know, one of the trends that I hear about product ops is that every company does it a little bit differently. Why, Shereen, do you think that is? Like, is that something that you also hear? If it's true, is it good or bad? Is it actually true? Give us the scoop.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it's great. I think it's okay. I know when I first started, when I moved into the space of leading product ops for an org where I'd never done product ops before, one of the first thing I did was say, I need to find product op friends and I need to talk to them. And I talked to folks at LinkedIn, at Pinterest, at Facebook, and everyone did it slightly differently. And in a good example of that might be, I kind of very much align with both what Jason and Amanda have described. I've also seen organizations where product ops is actually really heavily involved in experimentation and owning more of like A/B testing, where in my experience, that's been more of a product function. So I think that it's totally okay. I think one of the things that makes product ops you know, so varying across so many different verticals is that it's in the early stage still. You know, it's like when you think about like sales ops and design ops, like it's another discipline that's very needed in many, many orgs, and it's going to take different shapes based on that org's business model, based on the end users. I think about a few of the things Amanda and Jason just said. I'm like, oh my God, I totally do the same stuff. But I have different end users. I have a different business model, right? And so you may be doing readiness. You may be doing a feedback loop, right? Or insights gathering. It's just going to be different context in the way in which, you know, you're sharing it maybe. So yeah, I don't think it's a good or a bad per se. I think it's great. I think for product ops professionals, it lends to like a ton of opportunities to help even shape it. I think you putting this together is amazing because it helps us all come together and learn like, oh, well, how's Jen doing it differently at MuleSoft? You know, like, and what can I learn from her that might apply vice versa? So yeah, I don't know when there's going to be a time where that definition is going to change. And I'm not sure if that's a bad thing.
Yeah. One thing that, you know, is interesting is that not only between different companies and different verticals, there's some differentiation. I've noticed on my own team that with different product managers and different eng teams that have different goals, right? Like they're driving different KPIs for the company. Even then, like there's not a huge consistency in terms of exactly how each product ops manager works. Do any of you guys see that with your team as well? Or do I need to step my game up?
I think so.
It's
Definitely.
true.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amanda.
No, it's okay. You haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think so. I think that's actually part of product ops job as well. I think often we're brought into organizations that are really disparate. And especially as companies grow and scale, some differentiation is good, but there needs to be some commonality. And I think product ops is one group that can help get everyone pointed in the right direction. So I think you learn a lot from these different teams and pick the best of those teams, as well as what you've seen in the industry, and bring that together to help the company move forward and really grow. Amanda?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that each PM definitely does have their own way of doing things, and that will probably always be the case to some extent. But there is a lot that product ops can do to help standardize some processes across PMs so that they're not recreating the wheel every single time they release a product, right? It obviously, if they're doing that, it slows things down for them and the product release. And it also makes it harder for all of the other cross-functional teams to do what they're supposed to do with the product because things are being done differently every time. So I think that it is, at least in my company, the responsibility of product ops to help standardize processes among PMs, but you are always going to see some discrepancies between PMs.
Yeah. What are some examples of that? Is that like a launch checklist, how training rolls out, how like macro and helps, like what is the set of things that you think, oh, this could be something that is standardized?
I'm laughing because when I was at Instacart, anytime something would come up, we'd go, we've got a template for that, because we were all new to the org and we were watching how people were doing stuff. And it's like, why is everybody doing that? Some variances, to Amanda's point, are totally okay, right? But when it comes to like operationalizing a product release, there's certain things that you're going to check off. So one of the very first things we did, especially when you're new to product ops or a new org in product ops, is like that checklist. Like, what are all those things that should be considered, and what are the things that don't need to be considered as a baseline? So, I mean, definitely we had one for like launch readiness, like when do you need proactive communications or reactive communications? Like all of that stuff was super helpful. And then that became a basis of like the next step, like, so how do we now project plan this thing? Oh, well, we use the checklist as a starting point, which from there you build tasks and timelines. So yeah, one of the things I often think about with product ops is like efficiency. Like, hypergrowth companies, they're hypergrowth because they're busy growing. And so sometimes you do everything in your power for growth and you can lose some efficiency in some of that. So, yeah.
I like that you mentioned hypergrowth. I think one thing that's interesting about this group of humans here today is that, we're all at companies that are very different sizes and stages, but the common theme across all of them is product ops, right? From Google, which is much more mature, to startups, which is like are starting to adopt this framework or this organization. Jen, do you kind of have a sense of what are the signs that a company would benefit from a product ops organization?
Yeah, I think Shereen actually mentioned one of them, which is everyone reinventing the wheel. They're going to release something and they're discovering through maybe mistakes or, they may miss some steps. I think she also mentioned every good product ops person loves a checklist. I think one of the other things I would say, having come in and out of the product management world, is overtaxed PMs. And we all know PMs is a pretty intense job as is, but when you find PMs also not only trying to run the roadmap and work with the engineering teams, but also trying to figure out how to launch a product, trying to figure out how to work with the field teams and the support teams and the marketing teams, and having to reinvent that each time, I think that's a big sign that product ops could come in and help connect the dots, help find the best practices and share those. I think the other thing you might see is real disconnects between some of the other parts of the org that we mentioned, right? So are the field not getting enabled well? So that's also coming back to the product management team for help. Is the support team having the same questions, or the knowledge base is not getting updated? All of those, I think, are signs that there's no clear tracks and not all the check boxes are being checked. So I think those are some good examples of places where product ops can immediately come in and add value.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great framework. I'm gonna pull from some of our Q&A because we got almost, I think, more than 20 questions at this point. Thanks everyone out there for getting in the game. So one question, and as we're talking about product ops, this one's to Shereen. Why did you decide to move back to product management after your time at Instacart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the main thing for me is I really missed the product development aspect of product. So, and I mean like intimately, like sitting next to an engineer. I love technology. And so being more intimately involved in like how we were building, a feature or the next product was a thing that I think from a product ops perspective, you may have some insight, but you won't have the bandwidth, guaranteed. You're going to be so busy as a product ops, lead or manager. And I really, truly missed that. And that was the thing that really drove me to make that decision to say, you know what, like there's something that's missing here. And for me, it was the product development part of it and being a little bit more closely aligned with teams like design and engineering. What I will say is that I do feel PM product ops. Like I've met so many people that are, interested in the product role. I think product ops is a phenomenal place for people to start careers going into product management. And even for folks that want to get into ops, like I spent, the time that I spent at Instacart, to what Jen was saying earlier, there's no way as a PM I would have gotten that kind of exposure to ops. I just wouldn't, because PMs are so busy productizing. And so there's so much value, I think, to be had to take risks. I think mine was one. I think it was a risk to say, I'm going to give this thing a go. And I was saying to this group before we started the call is that now I get to influence how this discipline product ops will shape in my new org, because there isn't anybody who's done it. And now I'm a PM going into this new org. I'm going, I need some product ops people, And so it's just, I still have a, like I said earlier, I still have a strong affinity to the discipline and the real need for it.
Yeah, I think one theme of questions that I'm also seeing coming from our audience is around, measuring success and how do you actually define whether product ops is doing what you intend for it to do. Maybe Jason, I know that Google is all about metrics. Maybe you could share your secret sauce of what metrics your kind of org is hoping to drive and how you measure success.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's something we spent a lot of time trying to define earlier this year. So like I said, like the thing that myself and my team were super excited about is making sure that the products, like the great products we're actually developing, lands with our customers and they're happy and successful using them, and it's making them advocates for our products. So the things that we really look at is like, how well do we do onboarding with customers? When we sell a new customer, how well can we onboard them to our offering? We also look at things like attach rates. Are we attaching this to the customer segments that we would expect to be, purchasing our products? So a lot of focus there. We also have like commercial objectives that we look at. So from like a P&L perspective, my team kind of looks over kind of revenue and discounting and the commercials that we're providing. We also look at our marketing and how well that's going. Is our field and the sales, and from a go-to-market perspective, are we able to train everyone and making sure things are landing well in the market, and looking at when we release offerings, how is the press responding to it and how are customers responding to it? So it's a combination of, attach metrics, onboarding metrics, looking at things such as NPS and voice of the customer in terms of how we measure success.
Yeah, I love that. I think, voice of the customer is one thing that I definitely hear a commonality and a thread across product ops orgs. One question that's coming up that's kind of related to this is, do y'all see a distinction between product ops in a B2C versus B2B, right? When the customer changes and the voice of the customer is less consumer and more business oriented, like how does that change how product ops works?
I'm excited to jump all over that one. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, where to start. In B2C, I did a bit of work just kind of surveying customers. Sometimes you'll have like a group that has raised their hand to volunteer to be in like a early user test group or a research group, but you're really not capturing the thoughts and feelings of all of your customers. You're capturing the feelings of those who are most excited to be involved. But you can, I think, get more info in B2C from actually testing your product, because you have, so many clicks that you can just try something out, do an A/B test and see how people react. And of course, NPS scores are very valuable there too. What the biggest difference I've noticed in B2B is that the product roadmap tends to be driven a bit more by your biggest customers, as opposed to like what product decides that they should be building this year in a B2C org. And so if one or two of your largest customers in B2B are screaming loudly that they want something, you're most likely going to build it for them, even if it wasn't necessarily on your roadmap. That's one of the biggest differences that I've noticed so far, although there are many, many more.
Just to piggyback on what Amanda was saying, I think I've worked a lot in B2B. I think the whole field side is much bigger, the sales side. And therefore you have those deals and you have a lot more, the enablement is very different as opposed to with B2C where you're talking about videos and documentation and in-product notifications for your end users. You have that as well in B2B, but you have a whole nother side where you're working with a different type of marketing to the buyer market, and then enabling your sales team, often consulting pieces, partners, sales engineers, et cetera. It sort of adds another layer of complexity to the enablement piece.
So there's a few threads of questions that I'm going to kind of bundle into one, and it's all around, you know, building credibility and building a brand. I think a lot of people who are considering product ops or starting out in product ops, like a lot of these teams are pretty nascent. So what are tips, tricks, recommendations that you have around establishing credibility with both operations and product and engineering partners? Like, what are some things that are just like concrete action items to actually really deliver value internally?
I'll share one that was given to me as advice when I started, when I was trying to affect change, to change the narrative on the words that I would use and focus on common goals. And that has been really helpful in establishing credibility across other functions, across our name as a discipline within the org. So if I went to an engineer and I was trying to be influential in some way to change a thing or a process, the narrative I changed was like, how can we have a goal in common? And if we can find a common goal and agree to that common goal, it just made it a lot more successful for me to get engagement from these other partners, from them to see the value that I was adding or that my team was adding. And that was something I learned early on in the role. And I exercised it immediately because what I was using wasn't working. And I definitely saw a really, really big difference. It also, I think, helped me professionally grow when I thought of it that way, because it's less about it being about my function, your function, or about me as a person or you as a person. It's about the goals of the company and or the goals of what we want to do for our end users. So I found identifying that common goal to be a really big way to establish credibility.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I think that, you know, having been in product, having been in ops, it's almost like those two worlds speak different languages, right? When you're an operator, your head's down, you have processes, you execute, and you have a list of things that you're trying to get done. Where with product or engineering, it's, you know, there's some execution, of course, to get things shipped, but it's more blue skies, creative. How do we innovate? How do we drive? And so getting those two kind of groups of individuals to speak the same language, I think is, you know, they're often just off by one. So when we started the product operations team at Robinhood, I know like my first goal was one, like be the Rosetta Stone, right? Understand how each of them speak and what they need and translate. Because at the end of the day, you hire smart people and you give them the same high level goal, right? They should come to the same conclusion. Often it's just the context that's a little bit different. But also just like, there's so much value to add everywhere. It's about identifying like what is really broken and how can your team jump on that thing. So for us last year when we were setting up the team, it was very much that our launch readiness process. You know, we were shipping so quickly that, you know, customers would sometimes write into our support team and say, hey, this thing is broken. And that is the first time the support team would hear about that new feature. And so by being able to kind of plug that hole, right, you provide value to the product team, you provide value to the ops team, like you're doing something that is, you know, instantly valuable to everyone. There's so many of those, I think, all across tech that product ops can really easily slide into. Any other thoughts?
I want to add one thing there. I totally agree that it's really important to build credibility between teams, right? Product and all the cross-functional teams that you're working with. And I 100% agree with your strategy on that and have used that myself, and it definitely works. One other thing that I think is often overlooked is establishing credibility for product ops within the broader product team, right? So especially with a high growth startup where the product managers are used to being able to kind of do things their way. And then this product ops org is established and people are kind of like, I don't want to follow a process, right? Like I like doing it this way. It's worked for me. So why would I change? And so I don't have a perfect answer for that, but I just think it's important to highlight that part of the role or part of what will help make you successful in the role is also establishing credibility within the product team itself.
Amanda, I just want to add, I think that is so important to marry actually both what you and Shereen were just saying. I think I often approach it almost from a product management standpoint, where I gather requirements from each group and try to share them with each other, because I think often folks don't have that perspective. They're like, I'm in my bubble, I'm working so hard, I'm doing everything. They don't really understand how it's landing, like the example someone gave of, I think Christine gave of the customer service having no idea about the new feature. And so taking those requirements, finding the common ground and sharing them, I think is often a really helpful way to start showing that credibility and showing how you can, some small changes can really have great value.
Let's talk structure for a second, because I think that one thing I'm seeing is, there's a lot of curiosity around the product and product ops relationship. Do you guys find that the way you structure is like one-to-one POM, product ops manager to PM? Like, how does that pairing work? What do you find is like the magical way to actually work with a product team?
Take a stab at that. So on my team, the way that we're structured is more by function. So there's someone on my team that focuses more on working with sales enablement, marketing. There's someone else that focuses on customer onboarding. Someone else that focuses on sales activation. So we're divided more by function instead of looking after just like single products or single features. But I think part of that's going to just depend on what is the product that you're working on, who is your customer, what are the gaps in the organization that you need to fill.
Back to the everyone does it a little bit differently storyline.
I'll chime in because we do it fairly differently, or actually very differently. So first of all, there are 2 product ops people right now, including myself, to support over 20 PMs. And many, many different products. So that's challenging in and of itself. But the way we divide it up is by product. So, and the reason I think that helps is each product ops person will have an expertise in that product from the time it's being developed to the full launch. And so whether we're fielding questions from the salespeople when it's first being developed and we're trying to find pilot customers, or when we're using account managers to try to find pilot customers, all the way through when it's GA'd and we're answering questions from the support team. It's kind of the same person who's been involved all throughout, and that works really well for us. Although it would be nice to have more people supporting all of those PMs so we could do even more for them. And
I hear that you're hiring then.
Soon, yes.
2 to 20 is a bold ratio. I commend you for that.
I'll add that since it's slightly different, the B2C component is really the way I built it at Instacart was based on the life cycle of a user and the products that the user would engage in. So there are like 2 people in the product ops team that oversaw the shopper's journey, 2 people that saw the consumer journey. But they supported many PMs because that one app broke out to probably like 5 or 6 PMs. So, it's probably like a product ops person to, 3 to 4 PMs, which is not as much as what Amanda mentioned. I think it depends, the structure too can depend on the environment in which you're working in and developing in. So like, how frequently are you releasing? If you're releasing daily, weekly, really big things that are impactful, that require a lot of readiness, that might change the way you structure. I was thinking about way back in the day when I was at PM at a much larger organization, and we released once a month. And there was no such thing as product ops back then. And I realized now, because I had the bandwidth. right? I had the bandwidth, like to what you were saying earlier, Jen, it's like PMs are so taxed. Well, back in the day, I had the bandwidth. And so it was doable for me to connect with the support org, right? But I think it really, that structure can really depend on like what that life cycle looks like for releases and your users. So again, goes back to, you know, it could take different shapes.
We have a follow-up. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to give a fourth view, which is I've just started in growing the team at MuleSoft. So I'm the only one in product and ops. So my VP, she has both product ops and program team. And so I think a lot of our program team does some of the work that we're describing as product ops. So while we're designing the processes, the TPM team and the product managers are going through the processes using the checklist, using the meetings and the cadences that have been set up. So it's really interesting, I think, also how program as well as product can team with product ops.
Yeah, Jason, there's a follow-up question specifically for you. What are the challenges you have with this spread out product ops team members by function instead of feature?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think like we talked about earlier, there's a life cycle of a product, from launching a product to deprecating a product. I think, for example, if you're launching lots of new products or lots of new features at the same time, and you have people focused just on one function, let's say like sales enablement and marketing, they're going to get overloaded, and it's going to be hard for them to balance all of the work they have, just based on how the team's designed. However, they get to really specialize in working with the key stakeholders, understanding for every product or every feature we launch, like we were talking about before, what's that checklist? What are those steps you need to go through to make sure this, for example, in a B2B environment, landing things with the field and making sure you're really, enabling them, that takes a lot of work, and you need to really build those relationships all around the world. So if you have someone focused just on that, no matter what the product or feature is that you're launching, they have the relationships, they know the processes to go through, and they have that expertise. But like I said, it's a balance, because if you're launching a lot of things at once, they're going to get stretched.
I think that's really interesting because, and totally makes sense, because what I've noticed is that every customer facing team, so whether it's sales and sales engineering or account managers, deployment leads, support, needs different information and a different level of detail, right? And so if you're pairing your product ops folks with each customer facing team, then they know really, really well exactly what that team needs to know. They can anticipate what questions that team is going to ask, and probably can basically eliminate most of the questions that we would get in the way that my team is set up, where we're trying to enable 5 different teams.
Yeah.
On one product.
Another thing, like the types of products that my team is focused on, they're very well segmented. So we have offerings that are targeted to very, very large, enterprise customers. We have, for smaller enterprise customers, a different offering for medium-sized, customers, and for scaled customers. So it's not like we're, there's similarities between all the offerings, but I think just part of the product portfolio that we're supporting kind of lends itself to this type of structure.
So I'm going to give a quick shout out. Keep the questions coming. I'm starting to see a lot of questions about career development, getting into product ops versus product. So I'm going to let all the panelists give a quick background of like, what is your personal journey into product ops for those who have done, played both sides of the fence? What led you to do one or the other? And why don't we start with Shereen and go from there?
Sure. So, I'd been doing product most of my career in some shape or form, even before they started calling it product. And I really wanted to work for a tech company. So prior to Instacart, I worked for really large retailers in the technology space, which is amazing. One of the challenges with that is a lot of the technology stack is quite old. So our speed to ship was pretty slow. So I'm like, hey, I live in the Bay Area. I should be like shipping things like really fast, or I should be in an environment where we are doing that, right? So I was really hungry to get into tech. And as I was searching, I came across this role, which was product operations. And I remember reading this description and I thought, oh my goodness, this was that thing I always wanted as a PM and I never had. Or I was in an org that was trying to establish it, but there were things that just didn't gel well. And it was just something really attractive at that time for me that was like, wow, like this would be really interesting to like still be a really big part of like product, but take it from a different angle. And yeah, it was, I think back and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, I didn't even know how I thought I could do something like this, but I do feel like it's an amazing transition. You find more people going from my experience, I've seen more people go from product operations into product management. I loved being somebody that had a product management going into product ops, because I felt like there were opportunities for me to build relationships with product managers the way I would have wanted when I was in product. It was amazing. I'm so glad that I had that journey. Honestly, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys if I didn't. And I also think going back as a PM, and I urge those folks that are RPMs or aspiring to be PMs, is like, if you don't have a product ops org in your work culture, to figure out a way to wear that ops hat in the process, even if it's 5% of what you do, but so much can get lost. It's such a big part of the success of products is understanding the operational component and giving it decent consideration. So that's kind of that was my journey.
So interesting that you talk. I think the trend that you notice of the journey from product operations to product management is a more common one. I know that when I raised my hand as a product manager, managing a team of PMs, and I said, you know what, I think I want to stand up a product ops org, people looked at me funny. They were like, wait, but you have that job, you have the PM role. And I think that like really knowing the distinction between the two of, one of them really is around operational execution and excellence. It is about, I think PM and POM can have components of both, but like I really, really personally love the 1 to 100. Like I love taking something that kind of already exists, this crazy idea that might, we might have a general outline of it, but saying, how do we scale this? How do we like set this rocket on fire and really enable it to grow, which really in a lot of businesses depends on the operational processes that you set up. So I know I kind of bounced between the two. Originally, when I started in product ops in 2015, it was really billed as, this is a stepping stone to product. That's the growth here. That's where you go in your career. I hope Delta V and, as product ops grows in the Valley, like some alternatives come out that people, of course you can grow your career in any way, but there's a growth curve within product ops as well. Any other thoughts about how you came to be in product ops?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. So yeah, I just started in product ops at the beginning of this year. Before that, I was in strategy and operations. So a big part of my role is, you can kind of think of it as like internal consultants, helping to set the organizational strategy, goals and OKRs, looking at resourcing, making trade-offs, helping to set the culture for the organization. And one of the big things we would always talk about is how the customer has to be the center of our culture. Everything's got to be focused on the customer. And one of the things I got frustrated with in my role was I wasn't really interacting with customers. I kept telling people customers are always so important, trying to spread that culture. But the thing that was important to me is I wanted to work more with customers. I wanted to actually help land things with customers. So that was kind of what drove me to product ops, is being able to really make a difference in our customers, being able to interact with them and watch how the offerings that we're bringing to the marketplace are really helping them. So, that's what gets me excited every day to be in product ops and to see it really landing with our customers.
So I'll say I'll connect with a couple of things that have been said. I started my career in consulting, then became a product manager, then program, and then product, and then back to product ops. And I think what's interesting to me, I think a lot of being a product manager is being around creation and building something and launching and working with customers, and that's exciting. My last role, there wasn't really a product ops org, and I got really burnt out actually because I was trying to do both. When they hired me, similar to what Shereen was saying, they were like, oh, great, you can kind of help on both, but that got a little exhausting. And then I vacillate between sort of the product ops or program side, because I also get a lot of enjoyment around helping people do better at their work, helping them be more successful, as well as, I think we were joking as a group before the call that we're a bunch of doers as well. And I think in the operations, you can very quickly see the results of your work and the improvement, and even a metric of like NPS of the customers that you work with, often internal customers, and see that success very quickly, even sometimes faster than launching a product, especially in the B2B world.
For folks who are trying to get into product operations, what are some recommendations that you would have for them, and ways that they can be working on their development, or things that you as a hiring manager are looking for when you're interviewing someone?
I can take that. I think the easiest way to get experience is at the company you're at. If you're at a company and you can just reach over the line a little. So let's say you're in customer support. Can you offer and be part of the project to help get alignment with the new products that are getting launched? Start getting that experience of what does it take to launch a product from whatever vantage point you're in. If you're in product management, signing up to drive a new process or pull together the templates for the product team. Do they have a single template for a spec? I mean, there's little things you can do just to build that skill set. And when I'm interviewing people, I'm really looking for people who took initiative and really got joy and enjoyment out of something Christine said, of like just powering up this process, taking something that everybody else was doing and saying, oh, let's just do this better. We can all work together and simplify and take work off everyone's plate. I often say that, like, if it takes me an hour, but it saves 100 people 10 minutes, it's well worth the time to make this a better situation. And I look for people that can share examples that they've done in their own careers.
Yeah, I love seeing people that just have like an execution mindset, that love problem solving and have built a track record. It doesn't have to be formal in name of, product operations or program management, but have a track record and some experience to pull on to say, yes, I can take a hairy problem and I can dive into it. I can put a framework against it. I can help lead a team to solve it. And we end up in a better place because of it. So, if you're in a pure operations role, right? If you're in a customer support role, right? You might be going above and beyond just answering tickets. You might say, okay, what are the tickets that I find myself answering over and over and over again? How do I maybe automate some part of that? How do I make this a little bit better? How do I make it a little bit more scalable? So I think that skill can kind of come from any place. Let me do a quick perusal of the Q&A really quickly.
While you're looking, Christina, I just want to say, I think you highlighted something that's so important. Can you rally people?
Yeah.
I think that is a key skill. How can you bring people together and find common ground? We talked about that a little bit earlier, but you really got to get folks to align around a common goal and move forward together.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a fun question. What is the toughest part of your job leading a product operations organization? I feel like I'm gonna have some feels for these answers.
Okay, the one I'll share that tends just to be, I'm okay doing it. Because to Jen's point, you got to be able to get in there, right? And move people. I think the hardest one is when you have to raise the red flag for launch because of an ops perspective, right? Because some of the things I've experienced in my time in product ops is like, well, if the product's fully loaded and it's defect free, why wouldn't we launch this bad boy, right? Like, why would we hold a product if the users that would benefit from it want it, they're ready for it, and the product's ready? I think sometimes what happens, and this is where product ops is great, and this is why we need it, is that there are these operational components that if those things aren't ready, then that amazing technology you just built will fail miserably, right? And so the example I would use is that something we run into often is like, or they forgot to tell us they're working on this feature and they want to launch it on Friday and it's Thursday evening. And this feature is such that I would need to ensure 1,700 agents, customer service agents globally are very well versed on it. Because if they pivot on this narrative, it could be really a media storm, right? And to say that because agents aren't trained, or this part of the workforce management team couldn't rally the needed people, is very hard, because from a product perspective, they're like, now you're blocking my product. Like, you're the reason my product can't launch. Can't we just throw something up on a bulletin? They'll know how it works. So there's this human factor to rolling out products that I think ops just does a really good job of honing in on the human side of it. And sometimes in technology, we forget about it, or we may not forget about it. We know about it, but we're like so gung-ho on meeting that launch date that we just want to get this thing out. So I found that those conversations in the very beginning, they were really hard, because everyone's like, who are you? And why are you blocking my product? Over time, I learned how to negotiate, right? To say, hey guys, if we do this, if we launch this product, SLA is going to tank. Right? Like, we're going to pay a lot of money in overtime. We're going to do all these things. Are we okay with that? Right? If we're okay with that, okay, then maybe we'll go forward. But if we're not, we may want to reconsider. So that was one for me that was always a bit challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find that sometimes, especially at very software focused tech companies, we forget that a big part of the user experience, and in fact, maybe some of the most critical parts of the user experience, are when they're interacting with operations teams, right? When they reach out and like extend a hand and say, hey, something's wrong, that's when they need things to go right the most. So yeah, I agree that kind of slowing things down from a velocity perspective for an operational, right? Like, we have to actually scale out this process, this SOP, this training, whatever it is. I always like to kind of reframe it again around the customer experience, right? It's not about ops training. It's about making sure that the customer has the best possible experience, because, our ops team is part of the product experience, even though we didn't build it. We're not, it's not being pushed to prod. It's still there. Amanda or Jason, any kind of thoughts on the hardest thing about leading a product operations team, or even just being in a product operations role?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just lots of stakeholders, and you need to be able to balance the needs of different stakeholders. I think one of the things we found kind of challenging, again, just the nature of being in a B2B organization, landing things with the field and with sellers. We have thousands of sellers around the world. They have different cultures. We're hiring hundreds and hundreds of new sellers every single week, and trying to make sure our message lands and they understand the offering that we're bringing to market, and they understand why, how it helps customers, and just being able to reiterate that, to all these thousands of people around the world. That's probably been one of the most challenging things that we've been focused on, but there's definitely been a lot of improvement now that we have a team that is solely focused on making sure this lands.
Okay, we're close to the end of our hour, so I want to get one last question in. When it comes to product ops and where you see the importance of this role, where do you hope that product ops is, 5-10 years from now? It's still, at least for me, feels like a pretty nascent kind of discipline. Where would you guys like to have it go if you were able to wave that magic wand? Ooh, sounds like we're gonna have to figure that out together.
I'll just throw something out there, because I do feel a little stumped. I'll be honest. I think more of this, Christine, like maybe more than in 5 years, but like for us, 6 months to a year, right? More community around career growth. I often use, I describe career growth for me personally, different for everybody, but for me, it's like rock climbing. I've never went straight up. I like hopped around, went to the left, to the right. However, I needed to get to the top of the rock. I figured that out. And I think that for for product operations, I'd love to see the discipline get to a place where people are so aware of it. And that is a thing people are really excited about, right? Like when they think about, going to school, going to college, learning, that there's so many different ways in which you can split up product related work. You don't have to be uber technical, you can be, but you don't have to be. So I think number one is just awareness. Even in this early stage where we say it takes different shapes and forms in different places, I think that's still okay. But I think over time is like seeing people build real great careers, and companies recognizing when and where. Because I think companies still, Jen brought up great examples of when and where you should be like, ooh, maybe we need some product ops folks, but not everybody kind of even recognize what that is. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think that for me personally, because if I'm going to ask the tough question, I should have an answer. I really would love that, like, kind of that awareness and identity. I like the idea that there are different flavors of product ops, just the same way that there's different flavors of product, of engineering. But that when an organization kind of stands up an org and says, this is what product ops will be, that it's not reinventing the wheel, from the start, like I think a lot of us have gone through. So some consistency there. Really quickly, before we wrap up, before you end the live stream, I'm going to do some really quick shout outs. So I'm going to present, see if this works. So if you liked this programming, if you enjoyed this conversation with these amazing humans, what you should do is you should go to deltaview.co. You should scroll to the bottom where we have this regular Delta V programming straight to your inbox. We've got some great stuff coming up. We have a wonderful group of, over a dozen advisors. Shereen, Jen, Amanda, and Jason are all part of that group. And we're going to be doing more speaker series. We're going to be doing coffee chats. We're going to be publishing content, and all of that is going to come through weekly updates. So sign up there. If you are in a position to be able to also support us, we got this little fun product ops shop, which you can find by going to the swag button up here. If you want, a very fun Delta V themed t-shirt, this is where you can find it, shipped by yours truly. All proceeds from this goes to pay for things like our server costs and Zoom subscriptions. So that's super fun. And lastly, to support us, if you don't want to buy a tee, but you still want a t-shirt, great people know great people. You probably are listening and know someone else who could be interested in product operations. Give us their name as well as your name, and we will enter you to win a free t-shirt. So thank you, Shereen, Jen, Amanda, and Jason for joining us tonight. Thank you everyone who tuned in. We'll be posting this on our website for anyone who couldn't join live. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks.